Hi, everyone. My name is Ambika Mattu, and I'm the editor of Femina. Today, for this conversation, we're joined by a very special guest, none other than the celebrated couturier, JJ Valaya. And we're here to talk about bridal fashion, his design legacy, and his label, which has been offering timeless bridal wear for close to 3 decades. Welcome, JJ. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
This is a question I think I've wanted to ask you for many years, and I'm so glad that I've got the opportunity to. What would you say the philosophy of your label is, and how would you say that it's evolved since you started?
Well, we're known as the Royal Nomads, and that's a title we've earned over the years. So if I were to really define my ideology, my ethos, it is the Royal Nomad with a penchant for Art Deco. And whenever we do a collection, every season, we always have 3 series in it. So there's the Royale series, there's the Nomad series, and there's the Art Deco series. So these are 3 seemingly contradictory sort of, DNAs, but they come together seamlessly in our collections. And we've been doing this for donkey's years. It's something that I intend to continue doing, at least till I am watching over the label and making it grow. So yeah, so I'd say that our DNA is definitely based on a foundation of royalty, because that's omnipresent in our look. But we like the spirit of nomads and the fact that they travel unplanned, go all over the place, imbibe cultures, tweak it to make it their own, and a total contradiction to royalty. So nomads and royals are actually extreme opposites, but it's beautiful when contradictions come together. And Art Deco, for the simple reason that I think in the history of styles of design, the Art Deco period is something which is extremely modern, even though it existed in the 20s and the 30s. But it's as relevant today with its linear forms and clean lines and modernity. So this is what I like to play around with, the sumptuousness of sort of royalty with the sort of nomadic spirit that the Banjaras possess and the modernity of Art Deco. So when we put it all together, we create this broth, which pretty much sums us up.
I wouldn't have, that's summed up absolutely perfectly. I also think this kind of seamlessly leads to my next question with everything else, with everything that you just spoke about. A wedding and a marriage is also a great journey to explore. And you talked about sumptuousness, which also I find we as Indians kind of really tend to associate with weddings. So the simple question is, what inspired you then to start designing bridal wear?
And believe it or not, my graduation collection at NIFT was not an Indian collection. It was Western clothes. It was all in ivory. And at that point of time, I actually thought that for the rest of my career, I'd only do ivory clothes.
Oh, wow.
With no semblance of color or embroideries.
Okay.
But as I got into this fascinating world, because it is truly fascinating, I discovered India like never before, and the access to the craftsmen and the weavers that we have. Also, I perhaps discovered the real India within me. And I truly believe that India is a maximalist at heart. We're not a country of minimalism.
I agree.
And anybody who claims otherwise is, misled. But if you look at India, look at our festivals. They are crazy. Look how complex they are. Look at our food, masala, so many types, and we're getting into, combining. Look at the French. They pick up a loaf of bread, a bottle of wine, and some cheese, and they're done. Whereas we get into preparing fragrances and auras and just kind of creating these sumptuous meals. If you look at our architecture, if you really look at Indian architecture, they were poor guys were carving away at stone for years to create these beautiful temples in the south. Look at the weddings. I mean, they're by no standards minimalistic. So when you look at the core of an Indian, we are maximalists. But yes, we also enjoy a Gora hangover. And we sort of, have this whole thing that we have to be very cool and with it. And we must look as if we've really arrived to the West, whereas the West is looking towards the East for inspiration. So it's quite ironical, actually.
It is.
So and then that happens, then you try and do what the Westerners do with a touch of India. And then, of course, that's another DNA, which works for some, doesn't work for some. But when it comes to me, I am hardcore fan of this country and of every country actually which has a fair amount of culture and history. And therefore the spice route, the silk route, they've always sort of fascinated me, you know, because they bring all the senses alive. I mean, you have taste, smell, sound. Look at all these countries. They're fascinating, you know, what all they offer you. So yeah, that's really it. So Indian weddings, no better platform to explore this sort of fascination for maximalism. And that's really where I found my true calling. Suddenly I discovered color, beautiful fabrics, brocades, velvets, silks. Then I discovered craft, and embroideries became our second sort of signature. Then we discovered the printing, and then that kind of came in. And so it was layer on layer on layer, basically just having a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun on this unbelievably rich landscape.
Oh, yes,
which
absolutely.
combines everything. Speaking of landscapes, however, I mean, you would be the best person to ask this to. How would you say that the Indian landscape, the people that you're dealing with, has changed since you first started the label? How is it happening on the other side?
Well, you know, it's very important to actually see what happened to the industry. Now, okay, I'll give you a comparison. So I started, we're going to complete 30 years in fashion very soon. And that, thank you. And that does not include my years at NIFT.
Oh my God.
So let's go back even more. So when I started my career, there were 6 or 7 designers in the entire country.
True.
There was one fashion institute, NIFT, in Delhi, which churned out 22 designers every year. There was 2 fashion stores which had just about come about to kind of, you know, start selling Indian brands. So one was on Som, the other was Folio in Bangalore. And then, of course, Glitterati and Hogan and all the others followed. There was no magazine or newspaper covering Indian fashion. There were no TV channels that existed other than Doordarshan, which essentially spoke about farmers.
And Chitrahar.
And the Sunday movie.
Yes.
Certainly, there was no internet. Travel was looked upon as, if you traveled, you were right. That was the thing.
Ultimate luxury.
Yeah, it means you went abroad, means you are like a king.
Yeah.
All right. Now, cut to today. Everything happens on this, as you know. This is the new world. We travel, live, learn, feel sad, heartbroken, exuberant. Everything happens on this little screen. Now we're talking about a world which has shrunk into the palm of our hands. We have access to everything. We're looking at magic happening around the world. We know what's in, what's out, what's cool, what's not. We have this crazy rush to keep telling people that we've arrived, courtesy the number of likes and followers we get on social media. We suddenly have, I've lost count of the number of fashion institutes in the country and the number of fashion students coming out. Every second person is now a designer. Every second retailer is a fashion store.
And everyone's a critic. And
everybody the critic, everybody the influencer. Oh my God, how I hate that word. Online retail, another platform. Now we have fashion weeks, and that also multiple. Now you can imagine the difference.
Absolutely.
From there to here. So, I mean, it's just a different world. And this is what evolution is all about.
Adapting.
And despite that, the one thing which has remained constant is the purity and the shebang of the Indian wedding, and which is quite amazing. And if you ask me honestly, if you want to know who's really evolved when it comes to Indian weddings, it's the Indian man, the groom. Because from the era of the 3-piece suit, where you used to go to the market, pick up fabric and go to a tailor and get stitched because he's getting married, to today's groom, who's like a true peacock. They want clothes to be able to rival what the bride is wearing. They want to kind of, you know, this is their moment to look like a true Maharaja. They want this memory etched forever. So they're open to experimentation and all kinds of things. So whereas the women, well, they're still wearing the lehengas. They're still wearing, beautiful Indian clothing. They're just extremely more evolved. They are well-traveled. They are aware of what's what works on them, what doesn't, which wasn't the case earlier.
Mhm.
They're also fitter, they are sexier, they want to feel kind of a little stronger. So there's a complete shift in the psychology of the bride and groom. Not so much in the spirit of the Indian wedding. It's still beautiful, it's traditional, it's large, it's still a lot of partying, it's a lot of fun. It
Mhm.
just was done differently 30 years back, it's done differently today.
Mm, I think you're absolutely right. And I think the communication patterns have also changed. Like you said, gone are the days when the groom would be sitting in one corner and being told what to do.
Yeah.
Whereas now there's a lot of coordination and a lot of conversation because everything has to match and come together. The families also have to come together.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's a very interesting way about talking about it, because that was going to be my next question. How do you think that the bride has evolved? And it's an interesting question to ask now, given the last year and a half that we've had. You know, weddings are back.
Yeah.
So I mean, I wanted to ask you what you think the new age Indian bride, is that fair in the first place? Is there a new age Indian bride, would you say?
I think there's a new age Indian bride every year. I mean,
Awesome.
this is where we are kind of a little misled, or perhaps we want to imagine that there is a lot of change happening, but over a period of time and everything. I think evolution is happening in its moments, and it happens every year. And it's crazy stuff. I mean, the other of late, for the past couple of years, we've had our brides from 25, 26, 27 years back
Mhm.
being dragged to our stores by their daughters who discovered their wedding clothes and now want to get them fixed to their size, this current generation. So to me, I mean, that's my ultimate moment, because I'm talking about, people are now talking about sustainability. But couture by its very nature creates, if you're a true couturier, of course, then you create product which is superb quality, it's timeless, it stands the test of time in terms of both the material and the way you've kind of worked on it. And it's moved from one generation to the other. So as far as I'm concerned, I've always been making, and many of my ilk, of course there are others too, we've always been making beautiful clothes which are heavily sort of bestowed with a degree of timelessness. They are incredible quality. There is, and more importantly, they are clothes that can be passed down generations. So, well, yes, the new age bride also wanted to wear what her mother wore. So to me, that was a big thing. But of course, a few nips and tucks, and of course, I want my back deeper and the sleeve a little tighter. All that was different.
Yeah.
But by and large, she related to something that was done more than 2 decades back.
And it still stands. Still stands the test of time.
Exactly. So evolution is happening every moment. Sure, we can say there's a generation changing and blah, blah, blah. I have 2 daughters, okay? So I have a 13-year-old and I have a 23-year-old. And believe me, between them, there are 2 generations. So I think it's happening much faster now, courtesy of the internet, of course, because it just throws up everything to these kids. But you've just got to create something which you absolutely love doing. Make sure that it has a degree of timelessness, and it can be really modeled around just about anybody in any year. I'm so confident. I think most of us who do these beautiful modern classics, I'm so confident that if any of our clothes are picked out or pulled out maybe 25 years later, they would still be relevant to the generation then.
I was going to ask you what you would say that your legacy is, and I think you just nailed it, saying this is what it is, right? When
this is what we are hoping and attempting. And
well, it's happening, clearly.
Yeah.
So, I also kind of want to, this is one of my last questions to you. I think you brought up this point about, there's a lot of access that we have, a lot of information, everything is so easily available on your fingertips. Too much information sometimes, and a lot of, I've personally experienced, out of personal experience, I see a lot of my friends who have too much going on, and the wedding process thus can become a little stressful for them because you feel that you've got this over control over it. But then when you come to the true masters like yourself, there have to be a couple of rules for brides that stand the test of time. So for example, even now, if you had to give brides who are picking their outfits a series of advice and points, what would those be?
Well, my first advice would be that always trust the mirror. It never lies.
Okay.
Because a lot of girls, when they wear something, and, when you go bridal shopping, you're never alone. You're accompanied by somebody or the other.
True.
And then everybody has an opinion. It's the cheapest thing in the world, an opinion. Yeah. So, and an opinion, if you're not very clear about what you want in your life or on your wedding, can be extremely distressing.
That's
because
true.
then you get confused, right? So I would always tell the Valaya woman, if she were ever to walk in, first of all, never look at a garment on a hanger. You see it there, but then you must try it. A garment's journey from the hanger onto a human body is so dramatic, and it can only be realized when you actually wear the garment. So do not go into the store, look at a garment on a hanger and decide whether this works or doesn't work. Pick it up, wear it, stand in front of the mirror, talk to yourself. And that is when you'll get the real answers. Even if you have one red flag, like everything in life, that means something is off. So you need to be very, very sure about how you're feeling, not looking in that outfit. See, if you feel good, you're going to look good. It's a direct relation, right?
Absolutely.
And then sort of switch off ears to the aunties and the cousins or this thing. They can give you guidance, but it's not the golden rule. After you've kind of figured out how comfortable you are with it, that's when the real game begins. And when you should know of what you want to be on your wedding day. And because this involves a lot of balance. A lot of people buy beautiful wedding clothes, which by nature of the occasion and the Indian spirit are already quite worked on and heavy. Then they get makeup artists who doll them up like, like those Russian dolls. And then they do a strange kind of hairdos, which sometimes don't work at all. And then, just about everything, everybody tries to do too much. And I think that is one of the critical areas where you can have the best of everything, but look like nothing if you don't learn the art of balance. So this is, I think, an art in itself, and which is why the era of the stylist has arrived. Because the stylist is looking at it completely non-biased. And she or he is giving an opinion which is going to make you look the best. And therefore, the role of the stylist today is extremely important, especially for those who perhaps themselves are not great at putting things together. I mean, they may look amazing, they may be fit as hell, but they're not fantastic in putting everything together.
Sometimes you just need a little help.
Of course. And, a good stylist, I think, is a dream. I mean, I'm telling you because of my own shoots, and that's why I kind of speak like this, because I'm a designer. I'm also a photographer. But it's always a pleasure when you have a great stylist on board.
True collaboration can come.
True, absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, no, that's very, very good advice. It's kind of going back to your true instincts as well, like you said, to start with. And then to back it up, having somebody who knows what they're talking about. And who is completely unbiased and not part of your family who has,
exactly
X amount of already baggage, maybe because they've known you so long. No, that's
preconceived notions can be very daunting.
Yeah, that's true. And you've already got so much going on around your wedding that it's hard to sometimes filter it out, right? JJ, my last question has to be, who is the Valaya woman?
Oh God, I discover every year, actually. The muses come and the muses go. And I think they're the most endearing beings in my life, because there's a certain energy, a certain flow which begins within when you see a particular muse, and then she or he becomes the center of everything, of my universe for that collection. So I never get down to generically defining a muse. I think it's incredibly boring to do that. Oh, she's an intelligent, strong woman who's well-traveled. I think that's all, okay, that's a given. They're intelligent, they're well-traveled, they're good-looking, they're not good-looking, they are thin, that fat, doesn't matter. That's all part of the deal. Okay, we are humans. But when I design, and if I have a muse in my mind, my process becomes that much more interesting. And there are lots of collections that I don't find my muses, but lots of times that I do. And I think it's just that energy. It's very difficult to define something intangible. But designers kind of, just have their own little world coexisting in this head of ours, and which is a fascinating world. It's like a complete parallel existence to the real world. And if that is fertile, it churns out a lot of magic. And I think that's what we all need, just a whole lot of magic.
Well, you have been providing that to us for close to 30 years. So thank you and congratulations.
Thank you so much.
JJ, thank you so much for joining me for what has turned out to be quite a wonderful chat. So thank you so much again, JJ.
Great, lovely meeting you online.
Absolutely.
And I hope someday I come and have a cup of coffee next to the transistor.
Absolutely. right here.
Lovely. Have a wonderful evening.
You too.
All right.
Thank you, JJ.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.